Hello, everyone. I am so glad you're here. I am so glad today to be talking about overwhelm and solutions for that, how to understand it. Overwhelm, like, why is it always overwhelm or underwhelmed? Why are we never whelmed? We're never pleasantly whelmed. We're overwhelmed and freaking out, or we're underwhelmed and we're like disappointed. What happened to whelm? Pleasant. We're not there, right? Today we're talking about overwhelm. So what this is going to look like, I'm going to talk to you for about 15 minutes. Anytime during that time where you have questions about what I'm saying, type that in the Q&A. It's right on the bottom of your screen. You can just tap that and type it right in. I'll be the only person who sees that, and then I can answer your questions. And then if you want to raise your hand at the end, I can bring you on for live coaching, and we can talk about your specific situation and how overwhelm is happening in your world in real time. So overwhelm, it's a big emotion, right? It's not one that any of us are excited to feel, right? We can go ahead and classify that easily in the negative emotions, and often negative emotions we want to get away from, right? So what I want to talk to you today is solutions to not necessarily get away from it, not to indulge in it, not to stay there, but not try to run from it. So when do we get overwhelmed? Often we have a project that's either new or it's very important in our lives, or there are elements of it that we haven't learned yet. Maybe we have a to-do list that's longer than usual because something has happened. Maybe there's a health diagnosis and it's upturning your world. Maybe there's a child going through some sort of challenge that's new and you don't know the solutions to, and maybe it's really hard to work through. Maybe you're just learning a new skill and it feels daunting and you're overwhelmed by it, right? So when you have these elements, there's certain thoughts that come up that lead to overwhelm. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this. I can't do this. This is too much for me. Shouldn't be here. This isn't fair. It shouldn't be happening in this way. All of those thoughts can lead to the feeling of overwhelm. Oh my goodness, I don't know what to do. Or I just can't. I can't even. So what happens when you're in that overwhelm? Maybe you freeze. Maybe you do nothing. You're in that blank stare. It's like being in a tornado. You're not watching it coming. You're in it and you're being thrown around by it, and you can't see clearly. You can't see solutions. You can't see tools out there to help you. You are fully in the torment, the whirlwind of that tornado. Right. So maybe you freeze. Maybe you're just like getting swished around and you don't try to get out of it. Right. Maybe you ruminate, where you're overthinking it and you're going through the same loop. What if this? What if that? 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 And all of that is equaling catastrophe, the worst case scenario, right? And you keep going to every bit gets to the worst case scenario, and then worst case, and then worst case, right? So we're spinning, we're looping in that worst case scenario. We procrastinate with things that don't help us in the project or the challenge. I'm infamous for cleaning when I feel overwhelmed. It's like I justify it, right, by saying I'm cleaning. It will help clear my mind to have a clean space. Really, I'm just avoiding the problem. I'm avoiding creating solutions. I'm avoiding thinking about what would actually work. I'm like, oh, I'll add peppermint in the mop bucket. That's a solution to a good smell, right? It's like, tick, 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 tick. Let me go do something else that gets me out of the spin. Or we do things like overeat. We're like buffering with food or with alcohol or something else. It's like we're just trying to get out of that feeling. We're running from it. Maybe we beat ourselves up. You're mad at yourself because you don't know better. You're mad at yourself because you didn't do it right. You're mad at yourself because you didn't start earlier, or you don't know all of the solutions, or someone else is doing it better. That's my favorite one, right? So you're making yourself wrong. You should be different in order to solve this solution. You're beating yourself up. And what you have these thoughts, I can't do it. You're feeling overwhelmed. You're freezing. You're doing other things. You're beating yourself up. The result you're creating is you're not doing it, right? You're not addressing the challenge. You're not learning your things. You're not taking one step at a time. You are not doing it. When you think I can't do it, the result you create is I don't do it. And so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy when you're not believing in yourself that the things don't happen the way you want them to. So, but why do we get to that place of overwhelm? Why are we in that place of disbelief? When you believe I can't do something, then you shut your brain down. Your brain's listening. It's like, okay, so what the answer is I can't. Therefore, I will not look for all the solutions. I will not look for any solutions because you've already told me this is a closed chapter. If I can't do it, then the book is closed. Let's don't try reading it because let's don't try finding the solutions because there aren't any out there. I can't. Your brain is believing you, or you are believing your brain when it says you can't do it. When you think the thought, it should be different. I should be different. The scenario should be different. I shouldn't have this diagnosis. My child should be supported in different ways. Your brain is looking for evidence that for what you're telling it, right? It should be different. Your brain's out there looking for all the ways that the current scenario is wrong. And it's going to deal them up. And you're going to be like, yep, and this is justification and justification and justification. Here are all the reasons why it is absolutely true that I can't do it. It can't be done, right? So what I want to offer you is we think when we're feeling overwhelmed that it's the thing, the task, or the new thing we're learning, or our child misbehaving, or the clinical diagnosis. We're thinking that's what's causing our overwhelm. We're thinking that scenario that we find where we find ourselves is the reason we feel overwhelmed. But I want to offer you that is not actually the case. The case is it's what we're thinking about it. It's what we're making the scenario mean that makes us feel overwhelmed. When you think I can't do it, you think that's true. You'll say to me, Missy, I actually do not possess the skills to do this thing, right? And that may be true. I do not possess the skills of unicycling. That doesn't make me feel overwhelmed. I could not care less. I don't care about unicycling because I'm not overwhelmed by that because I don't care about it. I don't want to unicycle. It seems really high. I don't want to bust my face. I don't want to break my bones. I don't want to do it. Even though I like balance, that I'm not worried about my skill of not doing that because I just don't care about it. And this thing that you have going on, this container that you're in, that you're feeling overwhelmed about, you do care about it. Otherwise, you wouldn't feel overwhelmed. You wouldn't care enough to feel overwhelmed. So it's important to you. So we know that it's not the thing that makes us feel overwhelmed because there are also other people who are crushing it. Some people have 800 things to do and they're just knocking them down. Some people, on the other hand, have 2 things to do and they're completely frozen by them. There are some people that are out there saying, I don't know this skill, I'm going to go learn it. There are other people that are out there saying, I don't know this skill, I'm done. I'm tossing in the towel. I'm expatriating. I'm out. I'm done. Right. And so they check out of the system. They're not trying to solve the problem. They're checking out. So you know that it's not the thing that's causing the overwhelm, because some people are crushing it and some people are exiting the building. They are not even trying. They're not in the tornado. They have left the state, right? So wherever you are, you're overwhelmed because you care. You're overwhelmed and you're in it. Even if it doesn't feel good, you're in it. And so what if if it's these thoughts that I can't do it, I don't know how, I don't know where to start, that are causing the feeling of overwhelm? What do? What we often hear the things, think positively. And when you try, if you're feeling overwhelmed and you say, I don't know how to do this thing, and you try to say, okay, I'm going to flip that and just think the opposite. I do know how to do this thing, but you don't. And so you don't believe it. And so it doesn't work. It doesn't materialize because I'm repeating the mantra, I know how to do this. That doesn't make it true. And so we don't believe it and it doesn't work. If we just flip the switch, that's toxic positivity, where I'm telling myself these lies that I don't believe, and I actually feel worse because of it. Because now not only am I overwhelmed, but I'm also dealing with a liar and I don't trust myself, right? And so can we bring it to a neutral statement? If I am if I have this thing that I have to learn, I don't know how to do it, can I bring myself to a neutral place where I can say something like, I'm figuring it out. I'm figuring out what to do. Now, when I say that, how do you feel? Do you feel calm, or are you still in disbelief? If you're still in disbelief, then take it back a step. Take it back to more neutral. I'm not even figuring it out yet. I am getting ready to figure it out. I know others have figured it out, and I can get help. I can see what they're doing and I can learn from that. You can keep taking steps back till you believe it, and then you start practicing that thought. So some options are, I'm figuring out what to do. I can find one place to start. Anywhere I start will give me some information. I can only do one thing at a time, so I'm only going to do one thing at a time, and I'm going to start with this one thing. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to try to understand. Or maybe I'm not willing yet, but I'm going to see what it might feel like to be willing. Right? It's all these, the spectrum. Where can you move along the spectrum to believing that you can do this task, believing that you can overcome this diagnosis, believing that you can support your child in the way that they need? That leads, these neutral thoughts lead to the feeling of possibility. And then when you're feeling possibility, you can take actions like do a brain dump, where you list all the things that you need to do. You list all the things you need to learn. And then you can categorize them. I can do that later. I need to do that now, today. And I'm going to do that first. So those three categories: do later, do today, and do first. You can start with that. What can I do? What will I do first? You can recognize those overwhelming thoughts. I can't do it. And you can add the word yet to it. I can't do it yet. I don't know how yet. This seems impossible for now, right? It's not possible yet, right? And then that gives your brain this idea of possibility, that it's out there. It needs to go find some solutions. It needs to go find some ways that you can do it. Embrace that it won't go perfectly, right? When you're learning, you're always going to stumble. And when you stumble, it doesn't mean that you're wrong or that you failed. It means that you're learning, right? So look forward to, expect that you're going to stumble. It's going to be rough. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be a little wobbly, right? It's not going to look perfect, by any means. So expect that, embrace that, and think about how you're going to have your own back when that happens. When I stumble, I'm not going to say, "What a dummy, you fell down. You're an idiot." Sounds terrible. But I've said that kind of stuff before. God, why don't you do that? That was dumb. And that doesn't help. That doesn't lead me to find solutions. It leads me to think that I'm dumb, right? So how can I say, "Oh, you just fell. That's what falling looks like. This is tough, right? I'm learning something new. Of course, I just fell. Makes sense that I fell. Feels terrible." And instead of running from it, you can say, "Oh, feels terrible. I'm not afraid to feel that." So the things that you can do for that when you're feeling overwhelmed. Number one, it's not the thing that you're overwhelmed about that's causing your overwhelm. It's the thoughts that you're repeating that are the beat down that lead you to feel overwhelmed. So how can you bring those to neutral? When you're neutral, notice how you feel. Are you believing that thought? "I'm figuring it out." If not, take a step back until you do believe it, and then plan to stumble. Make a list. Do now, do later, do today, do now. Recognize those thoughts and add yet, and then plan to have your back. Plan to be kind to yourself, to use language that you would use to a toddler who is stumbling. And you're like, "Oh, it's okay, buddy. Come on. Keep trying. Try it again. Try it again. Try it again." Every time you try, you gain knowledge that gets you stronger in trying the next thing. So if this feels like an exciting topic for you and you want to tell me what questions you have, but if you want to dig into it deeper, you can raise your hand and I'd love to coach you live and see what's happening in your life and how I can coach you through it. If you want to get on a private consultation with me, I'd love to do that and just see what you have going on and see if coaching can help you work through that. Find those neutral thoughts and then allow the solutions to come from there. So tell me what questions you have. All right. I see when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I can't see anything else around me. All I see is the problem in front of me. That is part of a stress response. So part of what happens in your body when you have like that adrenaline rush, that like when you're feeling overwhelmed, that often feels like an emergency situation, right? And so what happens in your body is your eyes narrow, so you're not seeing perspective. Your blood pressure increases. It affects your digestion. So your blood goes away from your intestines, your digestion, your stomach, and it shoots to your arms and legs so that you can really move away from what is terrifying you, the danger. Right. And so all of these things get you out of the creative mode. The reason you can only see that one thing is because you are deep in the stress response and you cannot create solutions in that way. You can only fight, fly, fight, flight, or freeze. There's a new one that I've discovered, fawn. So that's an interesting one and worth another discussion, but you're either going to turn and fight. That's not creating solutions. That is just creating survival. You're going to freeze, also not creating solutions. It's just hopefully avoiding the danger. Fight, flight, free. Oh, flee, right? Obviously you run away, you buffer, you get out of the feeling. And then fawn is when you try to please. You try to just make it okay. You make peace, even though it's not peaceful inside your brain. You're people pleasing. You're doing whatever you can to just make it okay. Make it okay. Make it okay. I did a lot of that in my childhood. I just saw the discord around me and I was like, I don't exist. I'm going to try to be perfect and just make it okay. But none of that is solving the problem, right? None of that is in your creativity. So the reason you don't find solutions is you're in a emergency fight or flight, high cortisol, high adrenaline space where you're not trying, your brain is not searching for solutions, it's searching for survival, which is why when you're overwhelmed, it does feel like you're not going to survive it. I can't do this. I can't overcome this, right? And it really feels that way. It feels like it's true. But when you take that step out, when you say, I see you overwhelm, I hear what you're trying to do. You're trying to keep me safe. You're trying to help me survive, but I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to take a step away, and I'm going to write down what I do know. I'm going to write down what I need to know. And then I'm going to write down the first thing I can do to get to it. I hope that's helpful. Okay. I used to eat in those situations to comfort myself or to escape thinking about the overwhelm. But of course, that doesn't solve anything. No, it doesn't, right? It doesn't. The food only solves giving you nutrients if it's nutritious. But if it's not, it doesn't even solve that. It just creates another problem of having to deal with it. So that it's right, which of course doesn't solve anything. These days, I try to breathe and take a minute. Amazing. So you're just calming your nervous system down. You're getting out of the urgency. Thanks for the good tools that you offer. So helpful. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Any other questions? Anybody who wants to be coached live? I'd love to help you through the problem that you're having. Sometimes it just helps to talk through it to see a different perspective. So the next question is, I find myself when I try to write down the list, I feel more overwhelmed. I've been there before, right? So there are two things I want to answer with that. Number one, you can go into that and see it for what it is. Okay, I see you list that's trying to terrify me. I am terrified. I hear you. I'm in your boat. And also I know that I can start one place. So you can see it for what it is. You can acknowledge the fear that you're feeling, because overwhelm is just a way of, it's a pause button. It's a way of not feeling what you're feeling. It's a way of covering up that feeling with just noise, right? Because overwhelm does, it's like almost rushing in your ears. It's like tornadoes are flying around you. It's like, I can't hear, I can't see, I can't think. It's loud. Overwhelm is loud. And that's why you're, the previous person saying, I take a step back and breathe. I take a minute. It's getting you out of that torment, out of that, that fight or flight and into, okay, I see you. I don't have to be in there. That's a choice. Seems like it's not a choice. It seems like a fact. But if you can just even physically move your body backwards a little bit, move it to the side a little bit, find a little bit different way, a little bit different perspective, you can help to move in your system, move in your brain out of that overwhelm. So number one, when you make your list and you're like, oh, no, it feels worse. You can practice that. That seems terrible, doesn't it? What a terrible solution. But hear me out. When you practice the feeling of, I am taking action right now, I am writing this down and evaluating. And even though I'm still believing today that this is too much for me to handle, I'm going to practice being here and surviving. One of the most powerful statements I've ever heard is, you have survived every single one of your negative emotions. You're here to tell the tale. You have survived overwhelm. You have survived shame, disappointment, disgust, all of them, fear. You've survived it. You're here right now. And so if the worst thing that can happen is that feeling that you, when you're making a list, because making a list isn't actually dangerous, is it? Right? We're not actually fighting a fire when we're making a list. We're just making a list. And what we're believing is it's too much. And when we believe that, we're overwhelmed. So if you practice making the list and saying, whoo, That feels crazy. And I survived it. Then you can start to build the trust with yourself that you will also survive taking action, taking that list and deciding the one thing. You might also survive trying the next thing. You might also survive doing a bad job, and learning from it. You might also survive do it not going the way you want it to, not learning from it, and also surviving, right? No matter what happens, most likely you're going to survive. So my advice to you is see it. See the list for the piece of paper with ink on it that it is, and then say, what am I thinking about this? And what's the first action I can take to quit thinking about it and start gaining information? So valuable. Thank you for that. Anybody who wants coaching? I don't see any more questions in the Q&A, so I value your time and I will release you back to your day. I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm so grateful that you are learning tools to help you, because life is so amazing and full, and sometimes it feels like overwhelm. And sometimes it feels like the pride that I just got through overwhelm. I didn't run from it. I looked that big old mean, nasty tornado in the face, and I decided to just step to the side of it. And then I decided to use the tools in front of me. I decided to find the tools, to find someone else's then the tools. There's so many options to you. And I mean, I didn't really get deep into this part, but you're as unique as we all are. These scenarios aren't unique, right? There are tons of people that have had more on their list of things to do than they can actually achieve. Tons of people. It happens all the time. There are tons of people who are in the scenario where they are learning something that they don't even want to learn, right? There are tons of people whose children are just completely off what they could ever imagine, and they don't know how to do it. You're not alone in whatever challenge you're having. Not that it is not unique and very important, but there are people who have learned how to deal with it. And so there's always help. There's always support. And it often just takes asking the question, hey, who's been here before? And I guarantee you there's someone who is feeling just like you are, afraid to ask, how do I deal? But someone has the answer of how to deal. So a lot of overwhelm is also that feeling of being alone in whatever you're in, and you're never alone. Maybe it's someone across the world, maybe it's someone across the street, but you're not alone. I guarantee it, even if it's a crazy situation. So practice that. And this really does take practice, looking at overwhelm and say, I see you. You're trying to keep me safe, and I'm surviving this overwhelm. I'm going to feel proud when I get through it. And you're always deepening that connection with yourself. You're always building that relationship. Thank you so much for being here. Let me know if you would like to schedule a private consultation. And also feel free, I'm going to post this on YouTube, and feel free to share that with anybody who you think it would be valuable. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have an amazing day and an amazing weekend.